Hello and welcome to this webinar series on applied analytics success stories. Though today's topic, GenAI and your career, is a little bit more informational and educational. So my name is Rajesh Tyagi. I'm the president of the practice section, which organizes these webinars. Before we get on to the webinar, I just want to take a little bit of time just to talk about who we are. Let's see. So for those who are not familiar, INFORMS is the Institute for Operations Research and Management Sciences. And the practice section is a special interest community within INFORMS, which basically supports the practitioners in this area. So we conduct a number of activities throughout the year. We have the 3 annual competitions. These are INFORMS level competitions, which have been entrusted to the practice section to conduct every year. So that's a big honor for us. The second item I wanted to just highlight was that we have these monthly events. So we have this webinar series, and we do expect to have about 3 or 4 webinars during the rest of the year. We also have something called the Virtual Networking Happy Hour. And this takes place on the last Friday of every month. So the focus is strictly on networking. So you get to spend time with fellow practitioners in very small group settings via a series of virtual room sessions. So this has been very well received by all the folks that will join this virtual networking happy hour. I do want to mention that on one of the prizes, Franz Edelman Award, the deadline for 2026 competition is about 2 months away. So if you're interested, just do a Google search on it. If you are interested in applying for it, or just reach out to me, I'll make sure to connect you with the right person for that award. We also hold a number of conference-related events during both the analytics conference as well as the analytics meeting. If you want to learn more about a lot of these competitions or the schedule, just go to INFORMS practice section homepage. Basically, just Google it. And if you click on events, you will see the virtual happy hour, and you will see the upcoming webinars. You will also see the past webinars. So every webinar that we have gets recorded, and within a day or two gets posted. So you can always go back and check all these webinars out. You don't need to be a member to access all these events. These are open to everyone, though we would love for you to join the practice section. We do have a very nominal fee. Membership is like about $20 if you're an INFORMS member, $30 for non-members, and $10 for students and retired members. But again, we would love for you to join the practice section and basically come and interact and network with fellow professionals in our area. So on to the webinar for today. So we have heard about how GenAI will impact various professions like lawyers and doctors and accountants. And we have also been hearing a little bit from our own membership on how it is impacting our careers and our profession. So we reached out to Konstantina Melu, who is an expert in this area and who's a fellow practice section members. And she has put together a very distinguished panel of experts from the industry. And before I hand it over to Konstantina, I just want to mention that we probably will not have any time to take audience questions today. But I do suggest that if you have some topic in mind that you think we should be covering within this context or something else, just click the Q&A button that should be accessible to you. Write in a comment anytime during the presentation, and then offline later on we'll look through those and try to incorporate some of those comments in any future webinar. So with that, I'll hand it over to Konstantina. All yours.
Thank you, Rajesh, and welcome everyone, and thank you for joining our discussion today. So our main focus, as Rajesh said, will be on the shifts that generative AI has brought to the professional landscape in general, and we will discuss how our roles are changing, the skills we need to thrive, as well as all the new opportunities that have opened up. So my name is Konstantina Melu. I'm a principal researcher in Microsoft Research, so I'm part of the machine learning and optimization team there. and I will be moderating the discussion today. So with us, we have an amazing group of industry leaders that will share their experience and their perspectives. So let's start with a round of introductions just to get to know them better, and we can go in the order that I see in the screen. So Karen, do you want to go first?
Sure, that would be the order on your screen. My name is Karen O'Brien. I'm a senior principal data scientist at Modern Technology Solutions Incorporated. We are a mid-sized and growing engineering services firm supporting a variety of customers, primarily in the U.S. federal agencies space. We own and solve our customers' hardest problems and do so with honesty and integrity. And that's a really interesting opportunity right now in this age of generative AI and all of the interest in this technology. I'm a longtime Informs member, an occasional speaker, and I really appreciate the opportunity to contribute today.
Thank you, Jim.
Sure. My name is Jim Bander. I've been a longtime Informs member, probably certainly since the merger of Orsa and Tim's, when Informs became the organization that it is today. I'm a lead product manager at Experian, which everybody in America knows as one of the credit bureaus. We also have a very large set of marketing data and health data. I personally work in the group that helps banks and other people in the other companies in the financial services industries make automated decisions. So using AI and advanced analytics to do things like originate credit cards and set limits and prices and so forth.
You take care.
Hello, Tucker Schaus. I am relatively new to the Informs community. I went to my first Informs conference this year. I was really excited to get to learn and meet, learn from a bunch of folks here. I work for Amazon Web Services as a data science and engineering manager, all internal products. So my customers are employees within Amazon, but we build both AI, and generative BI data products.
Here, Jesse.
Hi everyone, my name is Joshi. I joined Informs this year. I'm part of the practice section and also the Analytics Society. I'm currently the head of analytics at Google with specific focus on our supporting SMB advertisers in the Google ecosystem. I help drive projects on advanced analytics, AI, on customer experience analysis, resource allocation planning, and sales strategy optimization.
Thank you all. So for our first question, I want to ask you to share a bit about your experience with GenAI, and in particular, what are some of the surprises? What are some of the unexpected, ways that you have seen its impact or its potential in your companies or industries in general? Jim, do you want to go first?
Yeah, like I said, I work in consumer credit, which has been using AI to make decisions for more than 40 years. So you would think that it's an industry that is ripe to take advantage of this new technology faster than many others. I've seen really two things that have surprised me since GenAI came out. The first is that fraudsters and bad actors have adopted it so quickly. We just released a study that found that 72% of business leaders expect things like deepfakes and fraud to be one of their top concerns this year, but only 37% of those businesses said they are using GenAI as one of their tools to combat fraud. So, it's an arms race, and that has surprised me. The second thing that has surprised me is how quickly companies are experimenting, learning from the experiments, and pivoting with this new technology, right? So GenAI has taken off faster than other new technologies did, like the internet, for example. Klarna is a magnificent case study. So in 2023, they said they were going to reduce operational costs. They were going to roll out agents. They were going to handle 75% of their interactions with GenAI. For a while they did. They got 2.3 million conversations going, and they announced that they would be able to replace 700 human agents in 35 languages. And now this summer they're hiring humans again because the quality of the agents doesn't meet their standards for customer service. So I think it's wonderful that people are doing experiments and learning and then doing things even better.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Tiger?
Yeah, I'd echo on the speed and the difficulty that Jem talked about. It's very fast. You know, the models today are still light years ahead of the models a few months ago, and we're going to continue to see that trend. So if you just imagine the assumption that the model today is the worst model that you'll use, and then think about what that means for the future, it can be a little overwhelming. But then when you get into what was surprising for me is how hard it is to tune models with knowledge bases that you own, and how to manage the weighting that these models create for whether you're doing RAG or other approaches with GenAI. It's actually very difficult to get the quality that Jem was talking about. And I know this doing it inside of Amazon where we have all the tools and all the people, and it's still very challenging to structure a knowledge base and get a model to not only understand the context, but then actually act on it. I think people, as we start to do more of that, we'll realize how difficult it is to still do the engineering that's needed. So I'm a big believer there's still a lot of work for humans, but what that is and how that will change is up for debate.
Yeah, and we will touch a bit later both on the risks that Jim mentioned as well as some of these challenges. Jesse, do you want to go next?
Yeah. So there's two things I would say involved in, but both I would say tied to how we are thinking about evolving analyst or sales roles with
Yes,
the application.
Is it just me or there's a problem with the phone?
Can you hear me? Hello? Hello?
Do the rest of you hear him well?
Hi.
There's a little bit of a noise.
There's a lot of static.
Maybe you can go to the next person.
Now it's good.
now.
Okay. Now it's perfect.
Oh, okay. All good. Yeah, so I wanted to hear share a little bit about how we're evolving different roles with the rise of GenAI. So one of the examples that we're testing various use cases to use GenAI to automate, I would say, a lot of the analyst work. So one example is, analysts could come up with, SQL Python codes with just language, and that actually speeds up the analysis quite a bit. I would say the main consideration at this point is, how do we deploy the freed up time from the analysts, and where do they add value? Obviously, there's a lot of other problems that we can solve. So one of the areas where we have been investing a lot in, and also in interviews, hiring, and then also trainings, is actually empowering data analysts to not only just analyze data or look at trends, but actually being able to translate them into actual business decision-making inputs, which is, what the AI is not that, geared towards at this point, at least, because there's a lot of organizational, business and product context that's related to this. So I would say that's one area where I see the analyst profile evolving, which is less on, I would say, basic data pooling, manipulation, and analysis, which is being democratized, but more on insights generation and influencing using the data. On a similar note, there's also an effort that I'm part of, which is rolling out AI, I would say, tools for salespeople. And that's automating a lot of the manual tasks, such as, call transcription, insight summaries, or even meeting prep, or even creating the decks for the customers. Now the sales core capabilities now really shift towards, what AI cannot do, which is relationship building and maintaining those executive meetings and presence. And that is something that we're also gearing towards, which is, with trainings and enablement as well.
Thank you, and Karen?
Those were such great answers. I'm struggling to figure out what I can add my surprises. One thing that we're working with, in addition to velocity, is a gap that exists between the hopes and dreams of all of the enthusiastic adopters who want to use this and the actual capability of the technologies in an enterprise real world setting. And this is particularly important for our customers who operate within legal and regulatory compliance frameworks, where what gets submitted to the government quarterly or such, it must be right. It must be right. So trying to find ways to coach and train, but also communicate information to the end users to help them calibrate their trust, so that their trust in the system and the cues and motivations they have to go look and check output very carefully exactly aligns with the true capabilities of the technologies we're putting in place. So people are so enthusiastic about it, and they have a certain blind trust in technologies, and sometimes that's not appropriate. And we've had several instances where people were kind of confused and concerned and a little disappointed that the system got it wrong. And they were very surprised. And so people are being surprised by this gap. And so the opportunity there is to find ways to help calibrate the user's trust in the actual current capability of the system.
Yeah, and the expectations that they have. So one point that was mentioned by multiple people was around, automating some of the tasks that people are doing and how that changes their focus. So one thing I wanted to ask is more like for people that are wondering, okay, so things are changing. What are the skills I should get? What should I learn to stay on top in this AI landscape? So do you have any advice both on the skills that you believe are currently the most needed, as well as how do you personally keep up with all of the changes, because things are changing so fast? So how do you keep up to be able to be up to date? And let me start with Tucker now.
Yeah, happy to. Okay, so I wanted to capture those skills and what I'm doing about them. So I'm really excited. I have a liberal arts background with an undergrad in mathematics, and I bring that up because I think that GenAI is reinforcing the need for a broad understanding of the world. These models are going to be so smart at any one single domain, and we're going to have to learn how to use them. But the human ability to connect dots across domains, across different types of things, whether it's within a company, within an industry, I think is still going to remain true. And so, just the skill of learning different knowledges and how to go deep or how to stay up, that's a skill in and of itself. And then I'd also say that just get your hands dirty and play with it and use it. And as Karen mentioned, the reality of what you actually get out of, I've built a few chatbots and a few agents on my team, and at first we're very excited, and then you start using it and go, oh wow, this is garbage. Okay, this is what it takes to really tune these systems. Is a lot of work. And that's exciting because I think some of the things will still remain true of people who are curious will learn very quickly in the space. And what I do is I try to find authors like Ethan Mollick is a great one, who has a really good understanding of where this is and where it's going, both from a technology and a business point of view. Just do my own reading and do my own playing at night, right, and get my own certifications. So I think it's scary because the velocity is so high, but I think so many of the principles that teachers for centuries have been teaching will still remain, and so we just have to evolve through that.
And especially recently, I have seen also many lessons coming out on LinkedIn, etc., to get you started in some of this business side of things. So that should help as well to get started. Jesse?
Yeah, I think personally what I have found the most helpful is actually, to Tucker's point, actually doing it myself. So one example is I sign myself up internally for pilots where they're using, the GenAI tools to help with data analysis. So even before my team, I do it, and I try to do it with actual live project, because that's where I can actually see where things could potentially break down, and where I have to come in and bring in my knowledge or insights. That's one area. I would say the other area is I do a lot of I would say reflection and writing just systematically. So one example is I'm currently writing an article where I'm summarizing all of the things I'm seeing in AI in this B2B sales space, as for where it is being deployed and what the implications are. I think having that downtime to actually reflect on everything that I'm seeing and being able to put that on paper actually clarifies my personal thinking, and also freshens up my perspective for the future as well.
It's very good points. And now I want to add another dimension, so we can go to Karen next. Also thinking of the next generation, the next generation of students as well. So as we are, upskilling ourselves, how we can also keep that in mind as new professionals are coming out of schools and like joining the workforce as well. So yeah, you can answer more broadly if you like.
Sure. I'm a student of history and a particular enthusiast for OR, MS, and SA history. And I see these cycles of new technologies hitting our profession coming faster and faster and faster. And so my advice for upcoming professionals is to don't over-index on this current technology, but work very hard at developing fundamental problem-solving skill sets. And there are many problem-solving systems, starting with framing the problem. A superpower I see that separates people who can actually solve hard problems for clients from people who are just playing with technology or people who are trying to put some slapdashery out there just to make a quick buck, is people who can really sit down and do some metacognitive reflection. What are the analytical steps I follow here? And then what are the appropriate tools to apply there? Sometimes that will be GenAI. It has great capabilities, especially for summarizing output at the end, coming up with labels for visualizations, but it's not as hot at EDA as other methods. It's not as hot at optimization as real optimization methods. So I would encourage you to build a robust foundation of problem-solving skills, be familiar with many good technologies that can solve different parts of that problem-solving process, and then use GenAI where it's appropriate. As Tucker was saying, the technology we have today is not what we had 6 months ago, and I guarantee you next year is going to be all about world models, and so keeping up is hard, so focus on the fundamentals.
Thank you, Karen. Jim?
Well, I love that Tucker started with liberal arts because I do find myself going back to my liberal arts education being just as useful as the things I learned during an engineering PhD. Jaji talked about writing, and Karen, you talked about history. I think curiosity is the first thing that we can teach the next generation, along with the fundamental skills. As far as the things to learn, what's beautiful is that the things that we've always learned, Karen was listing them, are still valid, but even the things that seemed like they were hot 2 years ago and may have flamed out have not. Right? So you don't have to learn world models just yet. You don't have to build a multi-agent system this weekend, right? If you haven't mastered prompt engineering yet, that was the hot topic 3 years ago. Read the latest Google book on prompt engineering, right? If you haven't mastered RAG, dive into that. What's CAG? You can learn context engineering at your own pace. So all of these things are coming along, but if you can master a few of them, that'll be great. As to the one thing we can teach the next generation, Reid Hoffman has this wonderful concept he calls super agency, where we each make ourselves an agent, where we each take what is unique about ourselves and then figure out how to augment ourselves with all of these new AI tools and become even better at those things than as the things we're already great at. And I think that's what teachers need to be encouraging the next generation how to do, is figure out what makes them human, whether that's the humanities by definition, whether that's the liberal arts, and use those human factors, that communication ability, to harness all of the new AI technologies.
That's a very good answer. And the GenAI technology has opened up many opportunities. For example, like for people that may not have as much coding background, like it has lowered the barriers to coding with all the assistants and the copilots, etc. So what do you see as the biggest opportunities now for OR and analytics and management science professionals in particular, where they can both leverage and contribute GenAI? And Jesse, do you want to go first now?
Yeah. I would say one thing that's I would say probably as an early sort of trend that I'm seeing is this democratization of unstructured data being leveraged in our analytics. So one example was previously, we have for customer experience analytics, we have been heavily relying on customer surveys and whatever score that comes out of those surveys. But now we have the capability to mine, just tens of thousands of customer support transcripts with AI with just one click of a button. So what that actually means for us is we get so much more insights coming out of those data sources, but it also presents a challenge because that to some extent is also noisy because we can't just feed them, all of those transcripts and say, tell us what's going on in those calls. So before going into those conversations, we also have to define what we were actually looking for. So one example was if we are using that to mine customer sentiment, we also have to define what do we mean by customer sentiment and what are the underlying drivers. So what I think, one of the early opportunities that I'm seeing is the wider access to a larger data set for analytics, but at the same time also a challenge in terms of how we bring in the structure that's needed for the AI to be helpful in this case.
That's a very good point. Karen?
Sure, I was thinking on this. My current analogy right now is that our current generation of generative AI technologies are like table salt, sodium chloride. Great compound, useful in industry. It is essential for life, and what a culinary ingredient. But you wouldn't sit down and just eat a big bowl of salt. So I would encourage us to think like a chef and treat this technology as an ingredient in an amazing customer dining experience. Maybe a little flourish of salt there at the end, but to think about creative ways to employ this for maximum delight for the end user rather than just trying to eat a whole bowl of salt. So this is like evolving beyond this current idea of writing giant prompts and trying to do everything on a zero shot basis, but to be a craftsman, to be a craftsperson or an artisan, and think about really delightful ways to move this technology in to how we support our customers.
Yeah, and this is an art by itself, like how to adjust. Yeah, Jim, do you want to go next?
Sure, Karen, you said be a craftsman or be an artisan. I wonder if, as a long Informs member, you've read Dmitry Bertsikis's new essay on the artist and the craftsman and the tradesman.
No, but I'll take that as a recommendation and go do that.
There you go. He's a giant in our field, so absolutely think about that. The big opportunities, right? One thing we're working on now is what do you augment versus what do you automate? I haven't yet met a modeler who loves building model risk documentation. So we are working with a company to roll out a product on our AI platform that documents our clients' models for them, that builds the model risk management documentation. So automate the parts of the problem that the analysts are not loving, are not being creative, and then let them augment themselves by doing things like building faster apps, building faster code, the fun stuff that is human and where they can create value.
Exactly. And Tucker?
Yeah, I think there's so many opportunities that as you find where you can immediately not only add value, but Jim, you're talking about automating. Well, you have to automate a consistent process, right? If you automate a random process, you're going to create a lot of noise, and every person is going to better understand within their company or organization. As you get started, and Karen, your chef analogy, as you get baking, right? Where can you bake a bunch of things really quickly and see what turns out well and what doesn't, and then double and triple down on what's working? Because I'll say within Amazon, I have the privilege of having a few kind of enterprise-wide tools, but there are a lot of people who are just automating the Python script that they want to do for their one-off job. and then they want to use the leverage tool, the bigger tools, and they say, Tucker, what if the tool does this, or this? And I'm excited because there's so much need for where these models and agents can both automate and augment, that the more I think we actually unpack what people can do, we can actually get a lot of value. But it's going to take time, it's going to take curiosity, and it's finding where you can get started quickly and just baking, those simple recipes and get moving. I think you'll find a lot of opportunities within your organization or industry.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I want to go to the other coin, the other side of the coin. So we're talking a lot about opportunities, but this also comes with risks. And already I think Jim mentioned some of the applications that may be a bit more sensitive. So the next question I want to ask is, what are some of the risks that you see, as well as ethical considerations when we are using GenAI, especially in these more sensitive applications? And what should people be aware of in order to avoid them? Yeah, let me start with Karen now.
This is a big part of my world right now, because for my customers who have legal and regulatory compliance requirements, the law is still the law, right? And so starting with understanding, what does the system have to do perfectly? What do we have some tolerance for the system to do imperfectly? And then what are the things that the system absolutely cannot do? I have found a lot of utility in sitting down with my clients and having just a workshop, small group, no witnesses. We write it all down. What are the things we want it to do in order to be successful? And what are the things it cannot do in order to be successful? And then build out plans for how to test and monitor those things. So risks, yes, but have an active plan. And this is work. This is an opportunity for our up and coming experts to really find a niche. How can we monitor these systems so that we can calibrate our trust in their current performance? Happy to talk more about this. This is one of my favorite topics, but if you don't know how the system is doing, you have unmapped, unmitigated, and kind of scary risks.
Yeah. And again, this process may take some time, and it's a difficult one, but yeah, very important to figure out early on. Jim?
Sure, Konstantina. You asked this when I met you a few months ago, and it's a wonderful question. And I think bringing the finance industry's experience to it is helpful, because we've learned you have to disclose when you're using a model. You have to make it easy for the users or the stakeholders in the model to see the data that was used about them. You have to give them an ability to dispute and a process to complain when the output of the model isn't what they think it should be. And there has to be a way for the organization that's using the model to either defend or correct that decision. So there's a wonderful quote, and I don't have it in front of me, from Bill Gates about when the first car accident happened. We didn't ban cars. We started on a 100-year journey of implementing speed limits and seatbelts and guardrails. And I think that's what's happening now.
Yeah. And Tucker, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think Karen and Jim, you both talked about telemetry, right? Understanding within a model what the input outputs are and why. And that can be done in multiple layers, and I think all applications really should strive for better telemetry, because if you don't know what's going on underneath the hood, it's already a probabilistic model, right? It's already a roll of the dice that even with the best guardrails and security, 1 + 2 might equal 4. And that's just the way that this technology works. Is it's the most likely thing to follow would look something like this. And so telemetry matters. And then finding, Karen, you mentioned kind of one-way doors, right? If the price of going through a one-way door is really high, what are the two-way doors where you can go in and out and find areas where, okay, it's okay, as you mentioned, to accept a little risk because the end outputs don't go anywhere, or they're not used so heavily for decision making. But I mean, these models are good and helpful, but they are, as Jim mentioned, I think it's really an augmentation. And I really like the concept to manage the risk of, it's not the human in the middle of the loop. It's a human at the beginning of the question, within the middle of the loop, and at the end of the question that still matters. So you can't skip and just copy paste outputs without thinking about what's actually gone into them in a high risk environment.
Thank you, Tucker. Jesse?
Yeah, so in terms of risks, I think going back to the I would say customer experience analysis example, as we get more access to the data, so does the biases and I would say the issues within the data, and that could potentially introduce risks or even inaccuracies in the analysis. So in that customer experience analytics example, we realized that only 60% of the customer engagements are transcribed, which means it's not a complete data set. And obviously for the remaining 40%, we don't know what's going on. So there is inherently a risk in here that, maybe the 60% doesn't represent the full picture. And that's something that we are fixing, which is we are mandating that all of the calls and meetings are transcribed, and that's embedded as part of the KPI. So essentially, what that means is everybody has a job to do in ensuring that the data that feeds our AI analysis makes sense and is correct. And then we also have to introduce one step before we feed that data, which is doing some analysis ahead of time to uncover if there's any potential biases or data issues within that data set. I would say more broadly, but more from a role and I would say equity standpoint, there will be, I would say, a gap in terms of who gets ahead of the curve just because he or she or somebody is more well-versed in AI or has more exposure to AI. So one area that I'm personally very interested in is how we level the playing field for people who are ahead of the curve versus behind the curve. So one example is, when we're rolling out generative AI solutions to data analysts, democratizing the basic skills and knowledge and also workflow for folks, and also ensuring that AI just doesn't add to context switching or maybe disrupting the existing workflow, but just more organically integrates into the existing workflow. It's important to minimize that friction and also transitioning costs for people who may not be born into this context.
Yeah, actually, that's a very good pass to the next question. So I want to ask more about the roles themselves and more like get your sense, how do you see things changing down the road? So let's say a few years out, 5 years out. So how do you see the profession, like the analytics or RMS profession, changing with this extensive use of AI a few years down the road? And let me start with Jim now.
Yeah, honestly, I'm very optimistic that this humanizes things. Optimistic and scared. So we talked about automation and augmentation. I'm scared about the automation of the entry-level jobs because I worry that if we don't have entry-level jobs for the new analytics professionals, where will they learn to master the skills that gets them to be higher level professionals 5 to 10 years from now? So that scares me. The part I'm excited about is the human aspect of it. The idea that analytics becomes higher value, that it moves up the value chain, right? I imagine us taking the output of our optimization and simulation and statistical models and running them through a platform like Sora and creating a video so that executives can understand why is the decision optimal? What does optimal mean, right? I think this ability to communicate and to augment ourselves is really exciting, and that's where I see the next 1 to 5 years going.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And explainability, yeah, that will definitely be a game changer. Tucker?
So within Amazon, we have some standard roles that I only see staying the same. We're not creating new roles. We have different roles like a data scientist versus a data engineer versus a BIE, but in different companies, they'll be labeled different things. And I think that all of these roles are starting to blend the different tools that they use. We used to have more clear lines that a data engineer would more heavily use Python and a BIE would more heavily use SQL, but that's blending. And I think that where to go and kind of where to look ahead is start using different models, different tools that you can use within your own company or organization, and start just understanding the gaps that they have and start trying to fill in those gaps. There's this term jagged frontier that I think is really critical, where in some cases AI is really good summarizing and generating things, but in other cases, particularly there's a lot of gaps and weaknesses. And so you find that jagged edge where the AI is not good, but the human component, whether you're improving the back end or the prompts, which I still think is critical, improving these places will help us all build the skill set for the future.
Thanks, Edgar. Jesse?
Yeah. So I'm just thinking about the type of skills that we're now looking for in hiring data analysts. So I remember many years ago, there was a time when people had, Python or SQL or whatever on their resume, and that would greatly boost their chances of being selected for an interview. Now that's no longer the case. Essentially, that's more of an expected basic entry-level requirement. So that definitely puts a lot of, I would say, early career professionals at a significant disadvantage, especially since if they don't have, deep vertical knowledge on a specific field or industry. So what I think would really solve the problem is, number one, the basic, I would say, foundational analytic skills are still important because, first of all, we cannot trust AI blindly and 100% of the time. So that level of skill is still required to triage and diagnose and making sure that whatever AI is producing is correct. But that's not enough. What I think is really important is that level of business context and field specific knowledge that the analyst will be able to bring to translate data into meaningful insights and actionable recommendations. But that's not something that's widely taught in schools today. So what I feel, maybe this is my personal opinion, which is I think the curriculum I would say in OR or in analytics in the schools should potentially evolve as well. Both having foundational skills that we have today, but also potentially elective courses where people can learn a bit more about, a specific industry or application that they're interested in, so that they can have that level of understanding and currency as they are applying for more specialized jobs that's going to arise after AI.
Yeah, Karen?
Sure. I'm going to double down on some of Jim's comments about embracing the humans. And there are things that we as analytics professionals can augment our skill sets with in order to fill what's going to be a persistent and possibly growing need. Much of my view when I see organizations and agencies saying, oh, we have to have AI, what it is actually a cry for help, because there are still so many pain points that arise from data debt, tech debt, cumbersome processes, just all manner of inefficiency that's socio and socio-technical. So being able to work as a consultant and really uncover what is the true problem statement here, and then align appropriate technologies that can really help resolve that. I think as we get through this initial phase of enthusiasm and investment in all things generative AI and trying to do these giant workflows with agents and zero-shot 10,000 word prompt engineering, I think there's going to be a need to circle back, learn those lessons, and then fix it and really try to figure out what have we learned from this, how can we do better, and can we tailor our next attempt a little more targeted towards resolving those actual pain points. So soft skills, consulting skills, little things like value stream mapping, being able to organize a balanced investment. Yes, do fund generative AI things, but also balance investment in repairing and working down some of that technical debt, addressing some of the socio-technical factors within an organization that drive dissatisfaction and inefficiency. So there's those consulting skills, I think, will be a fantastic counterpart to a deeply deeply technical portfolio.
Yeah, and for sure, I know that many people are currently thinking, okay, I will learn the skills and I want to innovate. And at the moment, many companies are trying, they're building on GenAI, different applications, etc. So how do you think what do you think are some elements that can help the companies and the people, etc., differentiate themselves in the current environment? Tucker?
Yeah, I would. So I'll say within my own team, we've learned where we can do things based on our kind of history as a team and where we have unique knowledge and skills. In our case, it's particularly the data pipelines. And we've learned how to plug that into all the other efforts that are going on. Because there isn't just one GenAI strategy, I think, for any company. There's within a large organization or even small ones, you can have people doing different things. So the ability to, Karen, you mentioned value mapping, the ability to say, here's the page of more or less everything that's going on, and here's where my piece fits in. You have to be able to draw that picture. You could ask GenAI to help you with the picture, but you have to start and say, here's the most important critical outputs that we're driving for our customers or stakeholders, whoever you work backwards from. And here's how my piece fits and the other pieces in the ecosystem. And so if you could draw that super high level, I found that helps us have executive conversations about where does my product start or stop with another product. And there's so much need. There won't be one agent, one knowledge base to rule them all. We're moving forward and, multiple thousands, millions of agents, multiple thousands, millions of knowledge bases, that if you can kind of put that on a page, I think you'll drive a lot of clarity for yourself, as well as for other people that you need to rally behind you. Because without that, I will say it's very easy for people to say, isn't that just like this? And how does this differ than that? And I'd encourage everyone, if you're in that situation, to even just write it down. How does this product differ from this? And show the inputs and outputs. And I think that helps drive the understanding of how different pieces can play together.
Jesse?
Yeah, I would say at the company level, I would say one of the risks that I was seeing is, I would say this unstructured approach to AI investments and deployment. So I remember back in maybe early 2023 when, let's say, ChatGPT was just making its waves, through social media and all of that. I think a lot of the companies were so shocked by the capabilities of the tool that they rushed to, label everything as AI and try to prioritize every single investment of AI. So having been through multiple business planning cycles, I don't think that's the right approach. One example was, when we were trying to deploy AI solutions to the salespeople, or especially people who are not as tech savvy, that actually introduced more friction than helped people, because without, I would say, holistic review of the workflow, other systems, how this integrated into the day-to-day, it was a pretty steep learning curve for people and potentially took away some of the efficiencies initially as well. So what I would recommend is actually a more holistic review of all of the potential use cases that AI can help, and then really prioritize intentionally where we can actually deploy based on how this actually links to the overall business outcome, and then also how this how this may disrupt or not disrupt existing ways of working. I see a lot of AI investments with their main outcome being some, I would say, vanity metrics, such as number of people using this or number of views, but not actually tying that to end outcomes like revenue or ROI. I think that is something that I'm pushing more towards, because that's the actual place where we get to see the value from AI.
Yep, definitely. And Karen?
Well, it wouldn't be a speaking engagement for me if I didn't quote General George S. Patton, who's famous for saying, if everyone is thinking alike, then someone isn't thinking. And so there's always wisdom in stepping back and really surveying what is everyone doing and saying and thinking. And maybe there's goodness there. Maybe we're converging on a good solution that's successful for many, but maybe it's not. Maybe there's an opportunity adjacent to that, just before that work gets done or just after that work gets done. So conducting kind of a survey or a meta-analysis of what is working and what isn't working, and that kind of reflection in your practice. First of all, this field of operations research is famous for taking big pauses and reflecting on what does it mean to be an operations research person or a systems analyst or a management scientist in this era of new technology. I think it's worth doing here. Pay attention to what everyone's doing and then ask, is there a way to work just adjacent to that or just prior to that in order to find those opportunities and those skills?
Jim?
So much here, Constantina. You asked about differentiators, but then I heard about the data pipeline. I heard about prioritization. And Karen, when you said you were going to quote Patton, I thought you were going to say planning is everything, but plans are worthless. That's my favorite Patton quote, and it goes along with Chaji's. So getting back to all of those things, Chaji said you've got to prioritize where there's going to be results. And I think the differentiator is going to be having a set of 3 different types of projects, a portfolio. So using things, as Tucker was talking about, as part of the pipeline, right? Using GenAI to transform the data as it comes in, to do some of the processing where it's appropriate, to transform the data as it comes out. Using GenAI to make each of our jobs more productive, to automate the mundane parts of the job, like writing code where appropriate, like developing the risk management documentation where appropriate, and projects where we are improving the business user interface, where we're allowing our clients to better use the products that we're already offering them. Like, for example, we sell a boatload of data attribute scores models, and to have a chatbot that helps people decide which ones are appropriate when. But then when I think about the real competitive differentiator, I only see one left, and that is trust, right? I think the people who use these models are trying them and saying, I got one wrong answer, I'm going to step away a little while. And the companies that can differentiate themselves by saying, no, come back, use it, and here's why you should trust it, and here's where you can trust it. I think that's the differentiator. I think that's how companies are going to make a difference.
Yeah, and actually, trust is a very big, question, and there's also a question around it in the chat. So the next thing I wanted to ask is around the challenges. Where do you see the biggest challenges where, AI, Gen AI may not be there yet where we need it, and where more progress is required. And some of this is the trust that has already been mentioned. The question also was asking, how can we verify the outcomes that we get from this technology? So Jesse, do you want to start?
Yeah, of course. I would say just moving forward in terms of some of the trends as I'm seeing, just to recap, right? So there's more data, but more, I would say I'm calling for more intentional deployment of AI solutions. And what I would say what that means is I think there needs to be more broadly like an alignment from the leadership and the front lines in terms of, do we have a bottoms up approach to AI or more of a top down approach? Now, I think there's benefits and trade offs to both. I personally feel that there should be a mix of both. I think the initial discovery should be bottoms up because, people who are closest to the day to day will have the most understanding of the trade offs and where AI can actually unlock value. But I would say what they miss is how this ties to the broader business strategy. So what I'm actually pushing for, which is what we have now, is that we have set up working groups here to, I would say, to brainstorm AI use cases with frontline folks and then iterate on those. So we pick up a few, we work on those and deploy those. And if they pick up amongst the working teams, we ladder them up into the business planning cycle and where they will get more funding and scaling up opportunities. So I think that's where sort of this lies. I think that's also, I feel, where the future of AI investment, especially in large organizations, I would say are trending as well.
Karen?
Well, one of the current challenges I see is a function of velocity. And granted, there's a big global discussion right now about the role of regulation and being thoughtful and deliberative about how we roll these things out. But when you think about all of the wonderful ways that you can inflict harms on people, whether you're accidentally, unintentionally moving privileged data out, personally identifiable or health information. There's a lot of things that we have to do in order to stay compliant with those legal and regulatory requirements. And so I see not only is there the gap in calibrated trust versus actual performance, but a real sense of what is safe and appropriate use policy-wise across the different organizations. So that's going to be a huge challenge. And it sounds like a big bucket of ice water raining on everyone's parade. But really, it's really very serious. Civil rights, human rights, data protections. There's many different categories of data that has to be protected. And sometimes I think the enthusiasm for the technology is running faster than safe and reasonable policies surrounding how we deploy these. So I think that's going to be a challenge going forward. It's a whole lot of anti-fun. It really kind of rains on the joy that this kind of technology can spark. But at the same time, that's going to be a big challenge going forward. And again, that is an opportunity as we build and deploy systems. We can think very carefully about how are we going to structure these, monitor these, make sure that the models are robust in a variety of realistic operating environments, are able to cue the user if the world changes a little bit and now the models are somehow no longer competent. The world is out of distribution with respect to the model. I'm speaking more than just generative AI. That's all opportunity and that's all skill set. And that's not necessarily going to come with a data science degree or a computer science degree. So something to think of. There's huge challenge there to do this safely and appropriately. And we need all hands on deck.
Thank you. And now I see we have only 1 minute left. So for Jim and Tucker, I want to change the question more to closing thoughts. Like if you have like one piece of advice, like for professionals wondering, what's one thing they can do just to best position themselves for what's next? Yeah, Jim, do you want to go first?
Sure. So first, be a continuous learner. So sign up today for a course, from Andrew Ng or your favorite GenAI thinker, and use Notebook LM today to discover a topic and learn more about it. And secondly, assess your own strengths and find the ones that are going to be augmentable and not automated.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, I'll add, I actually really enjoyed using Claude and trying a few different models for a recent certification that I was studying for that was really challenging, really hard. I actually failed it 2 times. And then after more intentional study with GenAI as a coach, right? Saying, hey, help me understand this question. Help me why I'm getting this wrong. What am I missing, right? You have to learn how to use these tools. We all do. But the more we learn how to prompt well, how to build prompts and scale prompts and the inputs and outputs of these, I think the faster we will learn, but it starts with curiosity and using the tools that are available today. Some are better than others, and there's plenty of great resources out there for that.
Thank you, everyone. So I see we are at time. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Yeah, I hope you have enjoyed the discussion. And a big thank you to our panelists for sharing their perspectives. And Rajesh, do you want to share any closing thoughts as well?
Yes. First of all, I just want to announce to the audience the virtual happy hour this month is on August 22 and not the last Friday because we have the Labor Day long weekend. So August 22 is the happy hour this month. Aside from that, I absolutely love this panel discussion. I learned a lot. I really want to thank Jim, Karen, Tucker, Yaxi, and of course you, Constantina. And I hope the audience had learned a lot as well and enjoyed the presentation. So again, I know some of you were traveling, so thank you again for taking time. And again, for the audience, this will be posted, recorded and posted in a couple of days on the website. Okay. Thank you very much again.
Thank you so much. Have a nice day.
Thank
Bye.
you very much.
Thank you all.